job. That's a union violation.
Yeah.
Okay,
Here's your
we're
violation right
going
here.
to be streaming today to Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Hello, everybody. We're about to start the Gillmor gang. Everyone's got their places, and I'm
Turn it.
going to mute my phone. Everybody mute your phone, as I have not. And remember,
Got like 5 notifications saying this show just started.
All right, perfect. Okay, Steve, tilt up a little bit.
You mean down?
Well, I mean, however we're looking. All right. And all right. Mute is off, and we're gonna go in 3, 2, 1, and
oh so fast and never quite perfect.
oh.
Wow.
Yeah, no, it's not an indictment. It's just a fact.
Oh my God.
All right, try it again. Do a take 2 and just slow it down about 1%.
Sounds like a poem by Robert Frost or something.
Okay. Take 2, and we're gonna go. Mute is off, and we're gonna go in 3, 2, 1, and
Perfect. Hi, this is Steve Gillmor, and this is the Gillmor Gang. Welcome to starting in the far reaches of Georgia. It's Brent Leary. Welcome, Brent.
Far reaches, huh? Okay, I'll go with that. Welcome. Thank you. Happy birthday to Keith.
yay!
HBD to you, Keith.
Yeah, I got a great present, actually. Do you all know about my present?
No.
No.
No. tell us.
Cristiano Ronaldo has gone back to Manchester United.
Really?
Oh.
Just for you?
For how much?
He's out of contract, so it's a £25 million a season deal, which is for the world's best
bargain.
player is a bargain.
That's just a little bit more than Rachel Maddow's going to make per year.
Ooh.
Okay, so Frank
That's her
Radis.
penalty kick.
Frank
Exactly.
Radis, welcome.
I was going to say she doesn't score goals, but then I thought better of it. But now I said it.
Frank
Hi
Radis,
there.
welcome.
Hello, gangsters, and a happy birthday to you, Keith, and hello, everybody. It's great to be here. It's great to be alive.
Welcome to Dennis Pombriant.
Hello. It's also great to be alive here in New England, although it's very muggy. And I think I might go turn on my fan as soon as this is done. Okay, sure, good.
And that's, thanks to everybody who showed up, and especially.
No,
sorry.
no.
Didn't realize. Thanks to Michael Martin.
Welcome.
How do you do? And happy birthday, Keith.
Oh, wow. Look at that.
Way.
Good job.
That is so
Put it in the
cool.
chat.
Yeah.
That's
Sweet.
a sneak peek if I ever saw one.
And he'll eat it for you too. Just,
And just
If you
remember,
could,
if
you
you
could
call
hand
it a
it-
sneak peek, it isn't one.
over.
I
like
didn't
that.
call it. I didn't call it.
No, I know,
And
but
then
Frank
who
is
said it?
semi-doomed.
Oh.
Frank is semi-doomed. Well.
semi. I'm a semi-doomer. Semi-doomer.
I think I've stalled long enough. Welcome to the birthday boy, Keith Tier.
It is a great pleasure to be here on this wonderful day. I was up at 4:30 this morning because my oldest son Dylan was going back to Syracuse and had a 7 a.m. flight. So it's already been a long birthday.
You had to make sure he was on the plane, right?
Exactly.
One parent to another. What can we say? All right. So we got a lot to cover this week, but we'll start with something that we unwittingly covered a few weeks ago, which is the passing of Charlie Watts.
Yeah. The great Charlie Watts.
Yeah. I think it's interesting that, a lot of really, really fancy drummers have come out and talked about what Charlie Watts main strength was. And to me, I've said this before, I think the drummer and the bass player is the heart of a band, and therefore the drummer is actually the aorta. And he was a rock. His style was not fancy. He wasn't John Bonham. He wasn't he was not a fancy drummer. He was just one of the most solid drummers I've ever heard in my life. And I heard the Rolling Stones live at least a half a dozen times. And, you couldn't take away from them the fact that they were like always in the groove, that not in that same sort of pretty groove that, that a James Brown band would have, but they set the rock and roll tone with him and Bill Wyman, no doubt. And
when you say Purdy groove, you're talking about Bernard Purdy, correct?
I am, yeah. Who played a completely. Well, Bernard Purdy was probably, I think, the top R&B drummer, and certainly one of the top session guys. He was pretty fancy the way he played. He played in a real simple looking style, but what he played was really fancy. What Charlie Watts did was he played a simple looking style that was actually simple yet solid. So, both in their own rights were giants, are giants in Purdy's case. But Charlie Watts is someone who will be missed. Watts and Wyman were like, they were just the guys who founded that genre.
Well, I think that there was more connection between what the guy's name, the one who's
Keith Richards,
barely alive. Yeah, that guy. There's more of a connection between them, between Keith and Charlie than there was between Bill Wyman and Bill Wyman.
Yeah, Charlie.
Bill Wyman stated that he felt he would accentuate the feel that Charlie created.
Well, you even posted, I think, the sort of the ultimate lines about the fact that they all played sort of like a millisecond different from each other. So when Charlie would play a tiny fraction of a beat before you would expect the beat, Keith would accentuate that on the other side, and that would meld into something that was a whole. And my sense was that hole was always filled by the bass player. In this case, it was Bill Wyman. But that we may be getting too deep into the woods. Brent, what do you think?
Nice try. It's my show. So the comment about Bernard Purdy, I think, is interesting. For those of you who are Steely Dan fans, I'm one. The song "Deacon Blues" has the classic "Just Behind the Feel" snares of Bernard Purdy. So you can reference that for specifics. Sorry to interrupt you about your transition, Frank, but where were you trying to steer us?
No, well, no, I it's funny that I'm glad you brought Bernard Purdy back. I mean, there was a song called "Tighten Up," which was a really important song back in the late '60s, and Bernard Purdy did a version of that song, which absolutely blew me away the first time I heard it. You can go and find it on YouTube. It's superb, and that's a great R&B song from back in the day.
It's funny that in the UK, I love Steely Dan. And I was never a huge Stones follower. And the reason for it is in the UK, the Stones were what was called a greasers band. The greasers were the motorbike guys with the leather jackets. Steely Dan was a hippie band, and I was a hippie. The Beatles kind of predated all of that, so everyone loved the Beatles. But almost immediately after the Beatles, it bifurcated into mods, rockers, which are greasers, and hippies, and you couldn't like a band that wasn't in your segment. It was really hard to like a band, and jazz was not even part of it. So Charlie, to my generation, Charlie was like this posh kid who knew good music, therefore not interesting.
Well, and then of course he went on to put together a big band, Jazz Sounds. that played at Ronnie Scott's a number of times. And I think Michael posted something that I think made a lot of sense, and that was that everybody talked about the Beatles, but everyone listened to the Stones.
Well, they listened to the Beatles at home quietly, but at parties, it was always the Stones. The thing about Charlie is that he didn't evolve into jazz. He started with jazz.
Yeah.
And if you compare him to other drummers, he had an amazing ability to be a driving rock drummer and also a very subtle jazz drummer at the same time. In some ways, he reminds me of Connie Kay, who used to play drums for the Modern Jazz Quartet. If you just listen to a variety of Stones tracks and focus in on the drums, there's an amazing amount of subtlety going on in the way he uses his cymbals, the snares. It's not just a chunk, chunk, chunk beat. He's a brilliant musician. And one other thing about the big band that he led, unlike other drummer-led swing bands like Louis Bellson or Buddy Rich or Gene Krupa, Charlie Watts did not become the visual focus of that band. If you saw them play, he was kind of lost in the middle of the band with other percussionists, and he was there listening, driving, and digging the music that was going on. But he wasn't the star of the Charlie Watts big band.
That's a good point. Your point about the Gene Krupa and those ilk, if you remember, when you would see a Gene Krupa band or one of those other drummers play, there would always be a drum break.
And they would be on a riser, and they would have the spotlight on them.
Yeah,
their name was on the kick drum. It was them. Not with Charlie. He was an amazing driver that just didn't steal focus.
Yeah, they had a great, Ronnie Scott's did a great piece for him that aired on BBC just yesterday, I think it was. And a lot of the great musicians who play in Ronnie Scott's, which is probably it's the, I don't know, I want to say it's the Blue Note in London. It is that ilk of jazz club. Jazz and blues, actually, because you'll find a jazz group playing upstairs and a blues group playing downstairs. It's pretty amazing joint, and just everyone had great things to say about his true ability as a drummer, not just that he was in the Rolling Stones. As a matter of fact, most of the stuff that I've heard over here, it mentions that he was in the Rolling Stones, but it talks about him as a drummer, as a jazz drummer, more than it does about him having played in the Rolling Stones. The question now is, because they've just announced that they're going back out on tour, is who's going to play drums? I hadn't heard yet.
We talked about that 3 weeks ago, and it's a guy named Steve Jordan, who was in the spin-off band that Keith Richards had, Expensive Winos or something to that effect. He's also, he was in the Saturday Night Live band, and my friend David Sanborn's band, and
was that the guy with the hat that always used to wear a hat?
It could be, and he's terrific. So they did announce yesterday, I believe, that the tour will continue. So we have that to look forward to.
By the way, floating out on the internet is a wonderful photo of Charlie Watts sitting behind Louis Armstrong's desk. He went and visited Armstrong's house in Queens, and he's sitting there at the desk with Louis' 50s era hi-fi system behind him. He just, when he came to Queens, he paid homage.
It is also worth saying that once that era had passed, of the Mods, the Rockers, and the Greasers, everyone started to listen to the Stones. I started listening to the Stones around the time of Angie, Goat's Head Soup album. But before that, I really didn't.
Well, over here in the States, the Stones were, I believe, the second concert I ever went to. Worcester War Memorial Auditorium.
What year?
Oh, yeah.
It's like 65.
65.
Like
yeah, I think I saw them in
Jones was
66.
alive.
Yeah. I saw 72 in Baltimore. think I told that story about driving on the road, tripping, and the car was still moving as I tried to get out, and it ran over my foot. And I watched the entire 1972 Rolling Stones concert completely pain-free. Don't do that anymore.
I don't recall that story.
No, I'm pretty sure I told it to you.
I must have been
once.
tripping. Brent.
Yeah.
Were you a Stones fan?
Well, I have to admit, not really. I mean, they're a little bit ahead of my time, and but I think my favorite Stone song is "Miss You" because that was just funky as hell. Man, was that! And there, I think I might have shared. There's a, everything leads back to Prince for me. There's a video of Prince playing "Miss You," and it is awesome. That was just, the Stones. If I had to choose between the Stones or the Beatles, for me, it's not even a thought. Stones
Okay, well, we'll be right back in about 10 minutes.
Yo, you just threw a dart at Steve just there.
No.
I mean, the Stones were funky. I didn't consider the Beatles to be funky. The Stones were like,
well, on "I Want You, She's So Heavy," they were pretty funky, and that was the last track they ever recorded. So it was announced, I think it was today or yesterday, that that there will be a new Beatles album being released with 27 new cuts. It'll be a 5 album release, and so I'm looking forward to that.
That's Let It
Yeah.
Be.
this is the same music that John Lennon referred to as the worst pile of badly recorded shit ever. That's what he said.
Yeah, it'll sell like hell, man. It'll go
I
crazy.
was ready to say it's going to make his estate very happy.
And interesting that we were talking about this yesterday. I was at the studio, or at least walking down the street from it.
But I think Brent,
Yeah.
you also have to. I'm going to allow you now to empathize with non-funk people, because in my growing up, funk was not considered cool at all. It was like, why are they even trying to do that? It's not even interesting.
Oh!
We couldn't dance. I mean, I wouldn't go to a nightclub that played
Where was
it.
this that you grew up?
It was
Australia?
England. So funk is very much an American phenomenon that didn't travel at that time at all. Basically we had the Who, that was the Mods, the Beatles, that was everyone, the Rolling Stones, that was the Greasers, and then bands like Wishbone Ash, or lots of bands, Pink Floyd, that were the hippies. And
don't
funk
forget
wasn't
Faces.
a
Faces
thing.
was a band that did a really great combination of funk and rock. I thought they were terrific. Remember Jeff Beck and Rod Stewart together was pretty amazing.
The keyboard player in that band, Ian McLagan, was the keyboard player on "Miss You" that Brent is talking about. In fact, when I saw them, I think I've told the story nauseatingly often, of sitting in a room with one other a friend of mine and watching the Stones rehearse in Woodstock, and it was that tour, and McLagan was with the group at that point, and it was just so. It was an extension of the group that I thought felt a lot like what happened with the Bee Gees and Saturday Night Fever, where it went into what appears to be a genre, but it transcended the genre.
In 1965, I heard James Brown live at the Howard Theater. First time I ever went to the Howard Theater. First time I ever saw James Brown, and his drummer did a thing it was called the backbeat. It was a different way of playing the drums. It wasn't just a typical 4/4. It was the first time I'd ever heard a really complicated backbeat drum part. There's actually a song that came out after I heard James Brown's band do it, which was called Backbeat, which was based on that exact drum part. Became central to funk from that point on, still to this day. And it was something that I'd never heard that sound before. I might be wrong, but I didn't realize And I think that Jimi Hendrix was playing lead guitar with James Brown in 65. He may have been the guitar player. I do recall a guy playing left-handed Stratocaster with a Showman with a giant 15-inch speaker in it, because you could tell it had this huge aluminum coil that you could see in the balcony. It may well have been him, but I'd never heard music like that before. And from that day on, every band that I had tried to play James Brown music. Now, I was the lead singer back in 66, trying to sing like James Brown. Mostly it sounded like a little girl screaming.
The Bee Gees, the Bee Gees were from Sheffield, Steve. Sheffield was like Steel City. And Joe Cocker was from Sheffield as well. And if you look at Sheffield sound, Manchester sound, and Liverpool sound, there's this phenomenon called Yorkshire Cowboys, and Sheffield's in Yorkshire. And basically, there's this whole Yorkshire tradition of being very following American trends, which is not a Manchester tradition, you know, where Oasis, for example, there's lots of bands from Manchester, or a Liverpool tradition when it comes to funk, but as far as they followed American sounds, it was basically blues and rhythm and blues. So different English cities followed different American trends.
Where was Jeff Beck from? I mean, if you talk about
London,
blues guitar, yeah, I thought it was also interesting, Brent, when you posted that video of Paul from the Wings of Pegasus, who had never heard that guitar solo by Prince before. That was absolutely fantastic. I mean, you know, here's this British guitar player who is really good and does a lot of videos online. Had not heard Prince's playing before, and it was amazing to hear this young, great British guitar player talking about the way Prince played.
Prince brought it all to life for me, but so did I don't actually know the genealogy, but as I got older, I started loving Michael Jackson and Prince, which in my mind kind of belonged in the same universe, but probably don't.
Boy, you could do a whole show on that, because there's a lot of camps. You're either on one or the other. There isn't a lot of folks that say they could appreciate both at the same level. I mean, to this day, you can get into a fight.
But you know, you're right, Brent. But I didn't appreciate Michael Jackson as much during his heyday. So starting with Billie Jean. And the beginning of MTV, it felt to me like he was pushed into the MTV era at the very beginning, and I just didn't get it. I did get Prince, but years later, I really became a fan of Michael Jackson. The music and the recordings and the quality of it was astounding.
Well, particularly the Quincy Jones era.
Absolutely.
Which started with the first record, which was Off the Wall, which is one of the great records ever. So
my favorite Michael Jackson is album.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. I just want to get, if anything, I want to get Dennis's comment on the passing of Charlie Watts.
I think I mentioned this on the phone to you. One of the things, I didn't know Charlie Watts was a jazz drummer and had such deep roots in jazz. And I've heard Mick many times talk about the fact that he and maybe Keith and the others were essentially blues musicians, or they had strong blues roots. And it really struck me that these guys came together from jazz and from blues to produce something totally new, rock and roll. And they did it before our eyes, and they were great at it.
The interesting thing to me about the Stones was that they were formed by Brian Jones, not by Jagger and Richards. He brought them into the group. And his background was, basically he just loved the blues and some mixture of R&B, but for the most part, he was just basically trying to emulate the American black blues records.
There was the house or Mick Jagger's house is about maybe 4 blocks away from where I live. And and between where I live now and Mick Jagger's house is where Freddie Mercury lived. So for me to walk to Mick Jagger's house, I pass Freddie Mercury's studio, which is right in this alley with this big green door that says Studio Garden Entrance on it. And there were about 8 people in front of Mick Jagger's house yesterday, just watching the house. I think it was a testament to Charlie Watts, but it was interesting. And it's a great neighborhood to live in, by the way.
Is that
Where is
St.
it?
John's
Where is it,
Wood?
Frank?
It's in Kensington.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I couldn't
Both
hear
of
you,
them.
Dennis.
I think they went to Chelsea Art School, didn't they? Most of the Stones.
I think so, but not. Then when they got their money, they all bought like an acre in the center of Kensington and put a big wall around. Both of them have these giant walls around them. You can't even see the house or the studio where Freddie Mercury lived, but you can see the house where Mick Jagger still lives, and it's this giant, imposing white modern building. It's really something. Dennis, you were rudely interrupted by both of us.
Well, I just couldn't hear him.
No, I don't know anything about London, but I do recall at least one song talking about St. John's Wood. Is that in Kensington?
No, that's not. That's actually funny. I was there yesterday too. That's close to Abbey Road when I was visiting a relative.
Okay.
It's northwest London.
It's north of Regent's Park, St. John's Wood. It's the very, very expensive area. It's the most expensive real estate in London, St. John's Wood, even more than Chelsea.
You'll see. It's kind of like Beverly Hills. It's these huge houses with big security walls and just it's an amazing neighborhood. Michael, all we see is a tiny head at the bottom of the frame.
Oh, that's true. My
There you go.
something happened to my screen. It kind of
He has an NFT
the hinge
problem.
is loosening.
Did you hear the story about that kid? That kid who made $400,000 selling NFTs?
No,
It's
you,
like
you left
13-year-old
off you left the punchline off. It's not just selling NFTs. It was selling NFTs to
dummies, idiots.
That's
yeah.
the best part of that whole thing.
There's a lot of idiots in America these days.
America.
I'm sorry I pointed my finger at America. I don't feel like an American anymore.
You talk like one.
I know, but that won't last long. I'll pull it off like Madonna. If you don't know what that means, when she married Guy Ritchie, she started to get an English accent. It was just horrible. You got to remember that. You don't remember that?
There was a whole Twitter thread this week that Paul Graham started. Paul Graham being the founder of Y Combinator, who now lives back in the UK. I think one of his parents was British. And he did this tweet and he said, being back in the UK, I realized that in order to get into a work conversation, you have to spend half an hour talking about other stuff to people. Otherwise, they think you're rude. And somebody else replied, in the Valley, they think it's rude if you don't start talking about business right away. Why are you wasting their time with life?
Hey, by the way, there's a comment from Vince Mans. I don't know.
Vince Manzi.
Yes.
He's a powerful television executive in the American field of television executive-dom.
Okay, cool. Well, welcome, Vince, and thanks for the comment, which says, D. Snyder lives in my building. Does that count?
Absolutely. Vince lives.
Who's Dee Snyder?
Oh, come on.
No, seriously, I don't know. I know that he's
Come on, feel the noise. Girls, rock your boys.
Get
wild.
Not familiar with it.
What's the name of that group?
Twisted
Sister.
Twisted Sister.
Great.
Yeah. He's
And
actually
also-
he's a voiceover guy. He's a big voiceover guy in LA.
He hosts a show, like a show on Reels TV. It's like the breaking up of the band and all that kind. And I watch that all the time, and he's the narrator for that.
Yeah, he's good, actually. Thanks, Vince. I think Vince was trying to make fun of me there. That's what that was.
Well,
Well, keep
power to
on
him.
with that. Yeah, we want that. defense. So.
Okay, they bring the funk.
Yeah, bring
Yeah.
in the noise.
Yeah.
Oh, and now he says, I guess he's talking about Dee Snider. He says he has not aged well.
Oh, he's not talking about me.
Join the club.
Well, the amazing thing is that Keith Richard, who clearly has not aged well, has outlived two other members of the band.
That's amazing.
It is. Did you see that? I posted a picture of all of these musicians when they were children, like about 30 of them. And the very last frame was Keith Richards today. It was the implication, of course, it was hilarious. It was really funny.
I am
So that
amazed
I
that
laughed.
he's made it.
We all are.
Those are
Those of us
crickets.
who, you know,
That was an awkward pause there.
I was going to say crickets, but
Did you
okay,
see?
well,
Okay.
no, go ahead.
I had a memory that I've kind of lost, but recently some bands sold their entire catalog from Columbia bought their entire catalog. Who was that?
it just happened two or 3 days
Just
ago.
happened,
Yeah, and I remember. I don't think it was Columbia. I think it was Universal.
Oh, was it?
But but I can't remember. It was yet another one. I was going to post that, but it felt like, it's just everybody seems to be doing it that hit that age, and that age kind of.
It wasn't Oasis, was it?
No, it was an older band. And I don't remember who it was, but now you're gonna. By the end of the show, maybe I'll remember. One of us will. I don't know.
No.
Anyway.
We can just wait for Michael to find it.
Yeah, Michael's looking for it right now. You can tell.
Yeah, you can tell.
Everybody's got it. Everybody's sold. I don't know.
I mean, there's so many bands have sold.
So speaking of everybody selling, what did you think of Paul Simon in Central Park?
Didn't see it.
Now that's crickets. Well, what happened was he was going to be playing at the I Love New York concert on CNN, and it was rained out by
It was a
Paul Reed.
brilliant metaphor. It was a brilliant metaphor. New York coming back, celebrating the end of the pandemic with a concert with Paul Simon, Bruce Springsteen, and
Billy Joel,
Storm.
and a lot of
Billy
newer,
Joel
younger.
was not announced. Was he supposed to be there? Because
He was. But remember that Diana Ross performing in Central Park back in, I guess it was the 70s when it was raining, and she stood out there and took the rain. And I kept saying, I've shocked myself on a microphone with spit. You had to be there, I guess.
So I
wasn't.
I watched it. I watched it, Steve, because you told me about it. Yeah, Steve called me to ask how to get YouTube to record it, and I became aware of it. So I started watching it, and at some point, Barry Manilow came on, who is older than Charlie. Looking young, like his skin was like this.
He looked like a snake.
He looked like a snake, and I thought, who booked the acts for this thing? This. I do not want to be watching
Clive Davis. It was Clive Davis.
Yeah, he was Clive Davis. Yeah. But there were a number of younger artists who were supposed to perform later. I think the very last person that performed before they called it was Andrea Bocelli.
Yeah. No, he was earlier. He
Was he?
earlier. Yeah.
Yeah, well, everybody who performed was earlier because it stopped right in the second song of that guy that you were talking about.
Barry Manilow. Yeah, it stopped there.
That guy.
Never acquired a taste for that. I don't understand.
If he would have got struck by lightning, dust would have gone to dust. Right there.
The Fanilows would have bowed down.
All right, so I'm going to make an awkward switch here to an interesting comment that Mark Benioff made on CNBC, where he said that he and Salesforce has been surprised by how employees really don't want to go back to the office.
Really? He was
Yeah.
Hey, I
surprised.
saw that
He was
today.
surprised.
Because they remain, in fact, they feel that they're more productive, and so do the companies that are supporting this trend, that they're more productive working from home or from an environment that they control. It's kind of like a shift from, well, I'm not sure what it used to be, but to a kind of an independent contractor relationship between companies and their employees. Anybody have any thoughts about that?
Well, I'm not surprised people resist change. If you spend months learning how to be productive in your home environment, and you're in a groove, you don't want to get out of that groove.
That was
think,
interesting. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say a lot depends on what the meaning of home is. I can remember times in my life where working from home would have been a nightmare because of all the distractions, and other times like now where I love working from home. And what your home situation is going to dictate that. And the office sometimes is a great place to go, sometimes it isn't. So I think there's kind of enduring benefits of not having to go to the office. Like my wife has an hour long, at least an hour long commute in both directions, hour and a half really. So that's 3 hours a day that doesn't get wasted and she is way, way, way more productive. And wouldn't want to go back to the office. I've worked from home for years now, and wouldn't want to work in an office. But I can imagine young people with young families. The office is a place that you need to go to so you can focus. So, but I think he's right to acknowledge it, and it's a brave acknowledgement given, Salesforce made a huge investment in buildings. And I was talking to one of my CEOs the other day about the center of gravity in an organization changing from buildings to people, and what the implications of that are for people like SAP and Oracle, who have all this enterprise resource software and the soft HR related software, when the new problem is going to be getting stuff done with distributed teams. The software you're going to need to keep cadence and a check and presence and be aware of someone's situation is completely different to the software that was built up until now. So it feels like there's a huge opportunity in what you could think of as people-centric software.
Dennis?
Well, I've been following this for a long time, and I have to say that I'm kind of surprised to hear Benioff say what he said, simply because he's been working to deliver a large suite of applications that do pretty much what some of the things that Keith is talking about. I've been skeptical simply because I thought people like Benioff, companies like Salesforce have been pushing really hard on the idea of work from home after the pandemic. I think didn't have any data to go by, and they were, I think, communicating wishful thinking. But the more I look, I saw some research from Pew, I saw some research from McKinsey, and they're all pointing in the same direction, the direction of, we like working from home. We don't like the commute. We're happy to not drive an hour or more each way each day. So I think there could be something happening here. Now, the real question, there are two questions that come up. One is, and we've talked about this before, what happens to all that commercial real estate in the cities? And a more interesting question to me is, how does this affect where people live? And will this lead to more people living further from cities and perhaps reinvigorating some of the towns that lost industries over the last few decades to foreign competition? And will this be a way to rejuvenate America?
I think you're onto something there, Dennis. I wonder what will get people to do that. Will they do that on their own, or will they be encouraged to do that? And I actually think that it would be advantageous for them to be encouraged to do that by the communities that are looking to increase their position. So to
You know,
speak.
Paul Krugman has a newsletter today that talks about density in cities, and he makes the comparison between New York, where he lives, and San Francisco, and he points out that New York is far more densely populated, and he blames Californians, especially people in the Bay Area, for not wanting multifamily housing in their neighborhoods, which results in relatively inefficient land use and not very dense population. But the thing that he completely ignored, which I found just incredible, is the seismic underpinnings of the Bay Area and California, and how, I've seen pictures of Market Street from the 1906 earthquake, and it's like nothing but a bunch of rubble and the ferry building. And I believe there's a fault line right down Market Street just by coinkydink. So
didn't that happen again in 81? I think it was 80, something like that.
You ask Steve or Keith, but if you live out there, I think you feel tremors on a monthly basis.
Well, there was a big earthquake, Loma Prieta quake that struck the Bay Area.
Oh, right. At Candlestick Park area?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
most people.
Well, they were on television at the
wasn't
time.
quite there, but
World Series.
most people are aware of it because it happened at a World Series game. So they were watching Candlestick Park, but that's not where the earthquake happened. Well, there was a fair amount of loss of buildings and a big stretch of highway, and even a plate from the Bay Bridge fell out.
Yeah, there was that famous picture of the Bay Bridge with the cars that had been squished under it. It was pretty devastating earthquake, as I recall.
I mean, it was
So
nothing
my only point would be if we were to rejigger population in the country and make it less dense, and it would not be a bad thing.
But it wouldn't be in San Francisco or Los Angeles.
There's a related question to the question of commercial real estate, and that has to do with retail real estate, because so many stores have gone out and fewer stores have come back. So when you talk about regional centers being revived, if there's no downtown, if there's no shopping area, there's really no point to having a regional center.
Well, there's entertainment, including restaurants.
Yeah, if entertainment comes back, though, I mean, there's an awful lot of stories circulating right now that those, and I've spoken to a number of my friends in the entertainment business that are concerned about, what's happening with this, with the Delta variant and with these anti-vaxxers and the possible mandates of for all of these venues if you don't have both vaccines or both shots. There's some concern in the entertainment industry. For sure.
Everyone looking forward to fall openings on Broadway's nightclubs, movie theaters, suddenly had to pause. The audience suddenly became a little bit concerned. I don't know if I want to go to the club anymore.
Yeah, but it's going to what you were saying, Dennis. I mentioned this the last time I was in New York, and I just got back again after having spent a long time there, as you all know. So many stores on Broadway or on Columbus Avenue or on Fifth Avenue or on Madison Avenue are closed and never reopened. And they've turned many of them into like pop-up art galleries and things like that. But there's just so much real estate. And, then there's this, you mentioned about the large investments in big buildings. Now, there may be another reason why CBS Viacom has sold BlackRock, even though they're going to be leasing some of it back. But they're also putting their entire facility on 57th Street, which is a huge production facility on the block. So, you might make an assumption that is a precursor to a sale. On the other hand, it also will sink a huge amount of cash back into the company. I think it's a sale, and I think it's Comcast. But
isn't
that's just me.
isn't there a big studio being built in England?
Well, that's with for CBS, Viacom.
No, I don't. Just
Comcast. There's a number of big studios being built in England, which is I think is interesting.
So what's the logic of that?
Well, Amazon is investing. I mean, the streamers are now big producers.
Yeah.
So Amazon is investing in production facilities in the UK, everything is in a swirl.
Yeah, look, Michael, I think that, and I think this happens a lot. A lot of these announcements get made that this is going to happen and that's going to happen, and then it doesn't happen. I've seen that happen and then not happen a number of times. And I would not be surprised if, look, UK's got a couple of really great big studios in and around London. Pinewood, for example, is one of the great facilities. And and there's another one also out near the airport. I just don't know that there's enough stuff that's going to support another big studio. And I haven't seen any other stories beyond, hey, we're going to build this facility, that anything is happening.
You know what they specialize in there? If you think about Lucasfilm, they did a lot of the special effects there in London. If you look at the skill base, which is centered around Soho, funnily enough, if you walk around Soho and look for production companies and music, they're everywhere.
Yeah.
And then out towards Heathrow, there's all the studios that are now very, very high tech. So I think London's got a talent base, and it's a lot cheaper than Hollywood to get the same stuff done. So I don't think it's to do with the expansion of the industry as much as stealing business.
Yeah.
I did notice that
there's also a very aggressive tax program encouraging production in the UK. That's one of the reasons why so many Hollywood shows are not produced in Hollywood, why so many British actors find roles that have to learn how to do American accents, because you get a huge tax credit by having substantial British content in your movies and TV shows.
So that's what happened in Georgia, and with their tax credit law, which kind of was based on the original New York tax credit law, which was written by Pat Kaufman, who was the person that ran the television and film organization for the governor here, and then went down to Georgia and rewrote that. So that created a situation where, Tyler Perry built his giant studio, then sold his studio to the Aru brothers, and then built another big studio, and then on and on and on. But Georgia is a place in America that's also trying to steal some of that Hollywood business.
Well, I agree with everything that you guys are saying, except for the comment about there not being enough of a room for another big studio. My bet is the streaming community is going to have a major build out, and that there may be some consolidation once that's completed, where the cost of converting into a COVID responsive environment is going to be borne by these new studios, and then acquiring the older ones and then retrofitting them. So I think it's likely that that's going to be a very successful thing. Production
techniques being what they are and having moved as far forward as they have, take a look at what they did on The Mandalorian, for example. It didn't necessarily, which created these amazing 3D background scapes that actually moved with the camera, as opposed to a green screen, which didn't move or couldn't move with the camera. Those kinds of facilities, are being sort of retrofitted. That's what's happening right now. If somebody wants to build new facilities, I kind of feel like there's a lot of facilities out there that are easily retrofitted.
Okay,
what do I know?
Well, no, either you're right or you're not.
Yeah, ask Vince what he thinks.
Although Teddington, I got pitched buying a condo in Teddington last week in the Sunday Times from London, and when I looked into it, it was the former Teddington Studios knocked down, and they built condos on it. So it's going in both directions.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've got a couple of wild cards here. One would be Keith sort of got lost in a Twitter Spaces experience, and it kind of brought up in a conversation that Keith and I had the whole issue of paywalls and how they're starting to become, I think, really obstructive. And I also think that text is now starting to fight video and audio for real estate. And I think that's going to create some problems and opportunities. So one of the stories that he posted in the Gillmor Gang Telegram feed, the address of which is
t.me/Gillmor Gang.
Thank you. Was a story about Forbes going public.
The SPAC.
Correct. And this juxtaposed with something that Keith said to me. I'm not sure what parts of it were public, so I'm going to let him to say it again, or if he feels like it. What do you think is going on with SPACs right now, Keith?
Well, I know what's going on with SPACs because I've spent the last 9 months being in the middle of one with one of my companies. SPACs basically ran out of steam roughly in March of this year, but the publicity kept going as if everything was normal. But actually, if you look, very few SPACs have completed the journey to becoming public companies.
Can you give a quick thumbnail of what the SPAC's all about, just so that people understand?
Yeah, so a SPAC is where a bunch of people go and raise money, like a venture fund, $200-300 million. They then list the entity with the money as a public corporation, but it doesn't do anything. It's just sitting there with money. And then they go, and it's called a special purpose acquisition company. That's what SPAC stands for. Then they go and find a merger entity to target, where they can own a certain percentage of that entity by merging with it, and the entity gets to use the cash that's sitting in the SPAC. Instead of doing an IPO and raising the cash that way, they merge with a SPAC. And at the end of the day, you have a company that's public with an equity table of owners that includes the SPAC people as roughly 20% owners of the entity. And then what normally happens is immediately prior to that SPAC merger happening, they raise what's called a PIPE, a private investment in a public entity, which is adding to the 300 million that's in the SPAC, maybe another 500 million, so that the resulting entity has got plenty of cash on its balance sheet. What happened is since April, those pipes have not been happening. The private equity markets who normally would invest in them stopped. And so there were all these SPACs with 200 or 300 million. Nobody wanted to do pipes. And so the company merger couldn't take place because there wouldn't be enough capital to run it afterwards. So a lot of SPACs have stalled.
Okay, so that was about 30% more complicated than I was looking for. But
isn't a SPAC? Can I ask a question? Isn't a SPAC a way to go public if you can't get an IPO?
Looked at from the point of view of the company, yes. But let's say we decided to do a SPAC. Our conversation would be, let's go and get 300 million from Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley. and listed on the New York Stock Exchange. We wouldn't put any cash in ourselves, but because we put that together, we'd own roughly 20% of this entity with this 300 million. So we'd have got 20% of a 300 million stash without putting any money in. That's us. Then
Let's do it.
Then we'd go and find a company to merge with, and the SPAC as a whole would probably get 20% of the merged entity. So we'd now own 5% of a big public company without having put any money up.
Okay.
That's what Chamath Palihapitiya is doing with his SPACs, and what Vinod Khosla is doing with his SPACs. It's a way to own equity without putting money up, or sometimes known as zero cost of capital.
Okay, so getting back to the original headline, Forbes goes public with a SPAC. Good idea?
If they can pull it off, but I suspect it won't happen because of what I just said about the pipes.
Okay, so what does that say about the Forbes situation, and how does that spread into the whole media story?
Okay, so why would Forbes want to do this? The reason you do a SPAC is because you're losing money, and you have a plan that says if you can put a ton of money in the bank, 5 years from now you'll be profitable. That's most SPACs look like that. Now, some SPACs that will be true. For example, Open Door did a SPAC. There's a British company actually that closed a SPAC today. It's called Kazoo. That's the leader in the second-hand car market in the UK. Their plans probably will pan out, and they probably will be profitable 5 years from now. In the case of media companies, that's a hard bet because it's going in the opposite direction. They're getting less and less able to make money. And so giving Forbes effectively $1 billion on a promise that they'll spend it in a wise way and become profitable 5 years from now, I doubt very many people will believe that. The private equity company behind the SPAC is a big player in media. It, for example, acquired Yahoo recently from Verizon.
Was that BlackRock?
I forgot what they're called, actually. Steve might know.
Steve don't know.
Okay. Begins with A. Anyway, they're a private equity player doing SPACs. So I don't think I think it's a good idea for Forbes if they can pull it off. It's not a good idea for anyone else.
I'm with you.
What? It's a good idea for nobody else?
It's a good idea for Forbes. I don't know what their balance sheet looks like. Given the fact that they're in the publishing business and they don't have, from what I can tell, a large product line, I would imagine they'd want to raise some money to expand their product line, maybe get into streaming and doing some other things. But the whole publishing industry seems to be very challenged the last couple of decades, just finding advertisers.
Actually, if you contrast it with Axel Springer buying Politico. And Protocol, Protocol is very high quality content with great people writing it, and it's free to read.
Right, which is what I wanted to get to, is the twin governors of this, what appears to be, I think I agree with Dennis, a very challenging environment for the publishing industry. On the one hand, that's true. On the other hand, and that's exemplified by this rush toward paywalls, which, I mean, there are 4 or 5 things that when they get posted on the Gillmor Gang Telegram feed, sometimes I literally take them down because they're going to a paywall. And
you're the one.
You're the one that you have to have a subscription to the New York Times in order to be able to, which I do, and which I think probably everybody is going to eventually have.
But that's the problem. That's the problem that Keith's bringing up. You can have high quality publisher and great writers and stuff like that. but it would be a whole lot better if you had something that billions of people, not a few million, billions of people wanted.
I'm not sure I agree with that. And why is that? What is the product that billions of people want that millions of people are going to appreciate? I mean, they're two separate models.
No,
TikTok.
as a financial concern, as a going financial concern, I would rather be Facebook than the New Yorker.
Okay,
I'd rather be TikTok than Facebook.
really? You think TikTok has got legs?
I do. I do. And I think it's got a lot to do with the addictive quality of it.
Well, we went there last week.
Yeah,
so
I know,
I
I know,
addictive
but
quality.
now, but there was I think I read a report that said that TikTok was talking about creating a paywall, which I find interesting. Why would they do that? Kind of because they can get billions of people to look at stuff that millions of people are interested in.
Well,
I don't know.
here's
No,
why
I
I
think-
think that. Here's why I think that's accurate, which is they're moving into out of print. I mean, they've never really been in print, but they're moving away from that kind of media to a video media.
Yeah, they've increased the length of any TikTok video that you create now. I think that's either happened or happening. I think they may be in beta with that.
So that's where the paywall situation, I think, is going to come home to roost. With as people, they have Apple TV Plus, they have Disney Plus, they have et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, they have 8.5
They've got
OTTs.
they've got a well of money per month that they are starting to reach up to, and then these print medias are starting to have to compete directly with the video medias, and I think that's going to cause a problem on both sides.
Hearst, the Hearst Corporation made a big move towards getting into video. I don't know how successful that's been. Maybe one of you guys knows more about it than I do, but I actually knew someone that went to work for them as a producer, and they seem to have just disappeared. And I just don't know.
To me, it all comes down to content and distribution. So if you look at what happened to Vice, where they laid people off this week, Vice actually had great content, but terrible distribution. They were really old-fashioned in terms of their distribution model through cable and satellite. A bit like Al Gore's channel,
Current
was back in the day. Now you contrast that with another bad example is Cheddar. Cheddar had all this money, and its distribution model was also cable and satellite, and looked promising for a while, but now is off the boil. Whereas you've got Protocol, which is 100% internet distribution and great content. Then you've got Forbes, which, by the way, is crappy content. It's Forbes has become the place where anyone can write and publish under the Forbes logo. When I was doing a lot of crypto stuff, I got these pitches from people saying, "Hey, we can write an article about you in Forbes." When anyone can write an article in Forbes, it's become a marketing canvas for anyone.
Hey, not me.
Right. Well, put it this way, the brand does no longer carry any credibility for quality. That isn't to say there isn't quality there, but there's a lot of stuff that isn't quality there as well.
It's a club that anyone can join.
It's a club that anyone can join. So I think what it all ends up coming back to is talent and content with the right distribution. And the right distribution is not going to be cable, satellite, print media, or any of the above. It's going to be newsletters, streaming, audio like Spaces, Ezra Klein is a great example of somebody who's navigating between the old and the new. I think he's actually quite awesome right now. Kara Swisher is awesome right now at figuring this all out. There's a few people who, I hope we're part of
Rachel
that.
Maddow is.
Yeah. Well,
Interestingly,
Well,
both Klein and Swisher moved to the New York Times, which is also moving online.
But,
Yeah,
but they're kind of navigating.
Also moved to Twitter Spaces, which
Oh,
is,
yeah, well,
which
Kara is everywhere.
very,
She's,
very effective.
she's here, she's there, she's every fucking where.
I think we need to keep an eye on what CNN Plus is going to be doing. They have to hire some 400 employees. I know the guy that's actually in charge of that hiring process. They have to hire 400 new employees to create something new in the space that we're talking about, because they can't put CNN on the stream exactly as CNN exists without breaking deals that they've made with their local distribution partners. So they have to make something brand new.
So Frank, I have inside knowledge there. Steve will remember this, but probably 10 years ago now, I had this idea of doing a CNN for the internet called now.tv. And I talked to Steve a lot about it at the time. And Andrew Keene got me talking to CNN about partnering, and we needed $20 million to pull it off for a pure over-the-top news play, 24/7, global, blah, blah. And we talked to CNN, and you're entirely right. By the way, this was 10 years ago, so these must be long contracts they're locked into. They could not do anything on the internet because it would break their cable and satellite distribution agreements. Literally nothing.
Yeah, which is exactly the same today. And that's, now and that's why, for example, like Casey Hunt, I think that's her last name, KCDC, who was did this really early morning show called Way Too Early on MSNBC. She's great. She was a reporter on the Hill. Has been brought over there as a primary anchor for the news service. But they're not just talking about, from what I'm told, they're not just talking about creating content that will live as like a cable program on the internet. They're talking about trying to create something new. So they want to do interactive stuff. They want to do podcasting, which by the way, they've certainly got a lot of really great podcasts already attached to their main talent, but they also want to try and do sort of their version of Clubhouse. They're looking at creating, as I said, something new and exciting. Now it's the early days for them.
Frank, talk a bit about, because I generally don't understand this. It feels to me like CNBC and CNN are unique in that they cannot do straight to internet, whereas say Fox News or ABC News or CBS News and NBC can. NBC doesn't either, by the way. So what is it about these news contracts for these big news brands that prevents them going direct to internet? What is it, and how long do those contracts last?
So I remember sitting at an upfront when Jeff Zucker was the president of NBC, and he shocked the audience by saying, we're going to get the affiliates to pay us for the content, which had not been the case before. The affiliates were given the content, then they would barter the sale and give back a percentage of the sale to the network. He went ahead and said something entirely new, which was, you will now have to pay us for it. If you want it, you have to pay us for it. What the affiliates said, and this is pretty much the same as the cable agreements, what the affiliates said was, okay, if we do that, we want to do it on a sliding scale, but it's got to be for a lot of years because we need to protect our brand and our content. So I think that it's a historic thing right now. But I believe that many of those contracts are coming due. And that will be an interesting thing to watch as those contracts come due and and these doors open up. We talked about it last week. News is actually absolutely making this move into the stream. And look at what sports is doing. I mean, sports is making this huge move into the stream. It's happening every day.
But I think that the fundamental change that's occurring right now goes back to what I was talking about, Mark Benioff's comments about people coming back to the office. I think this is going to be driven by the talent. I think that it was announced sort of by a programmer who took a look at the source code for Twitter Spaces and discovered that there's a replay function in a next version, which they confirmed that they're working on a replay, which means they're working on recording. I've been saying for some month now that this has to happen to break open this audio market, and also not parenthetically connected up to podcasting. There are companies like Spotify that are going to be in big trouble if they don't get some talent on board. And you saw with
Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan just had a
right, and you saw with Rachel Maddow that she basically played this reboot into a much better contract at MSNBC. She didn't go to CNN. She stayed where she is, and she basically came up with a strategy which will turn her show from a daily show over a period of time into a weekly show, and then bring in all these other media to be able to deal with the time issue in terms of contracts that you're talking about.
Yeah, she's also creating the Rachel Maddow Media Company, basically. Part of what the deal was.
That's my point. That's my point. It's like in Hollywood after the 40s when the agencies took over as a middle layer to deal with the advent of television. That's what we're seeing here, only it's called streaming this time.
Yeah.
I know Brent's got to jump in in 5 minutes. Any comments or tangents you want to go on?
Tangents. Well, there's one thing maybe that was interesting I saw this week. How HBO looks like HBO Max is pulling out of Amazon channels and seemingly not worried about losing the 5 million subscribers they have, because they rather have less subscribers through that channel rather than have more folks directly coming to them where they have all control of the relationship. I thought that was pretty interesting.
They want the data, the first party data. Is that what this is about?
They want it all. Apparently, like when you buy or when you create a channel for Amazon Video or Amazon Prime Video, you have to share, I guess, the cut, and I guess Amazon controls the actual customer data or the customer information.
Mm-hmm.
So whereas if you create your own app, you get to own the customer information, and you get, you still have to share a cut, I guess.
That seems to tie in a little. That seems to tie in a little bit with Apple's concession regarding the App Store.
The marketplace stuff.
Yeah. Tell us.
Well, they don't want to get broken up. That's why Apple's doing that.
It sounds like the music business.
Yeah, but what can you explain what it is that Apple is talking about?
I don't have it right in front of me, but I think the crux of it is Epic and whoever else has been trying to sue the pants off of Apple, because you can't get away from Apple and their rules and their cut if you want to have a presence in the marketplace. And when there's only like 2 marketplaces that count for apps, you got Android and Apple, and those 2 companies really hold, is there any other way of looking at it, as a monopoly, and control so much of that whole market. And people are suing them, and Epic is the games dude. What are they, the Fortnite folks?
Yeah,
they're like, they've been doing battle with Apple forever, and I think they're starting to get traction, and a lot of government folks are saying, well, why do we let these 2 companies basically have total control over this whole massive marketplace industry? And so I think Apple is now trying to come up with some concessions to keep from getting sued and losing a suit.
what happened
Michael?
yesterday was
Hang on a second. I'm really trying to beat the clock here. Michael, your comment on the Apple comments?
I haven't spent a lot of time looking at it.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead, Keith.
So what happened yesterday is basically if you put an app in the App Store and you collect money, then Apple gets their share. If you put an app in the App Store and there's no way for people to sign up, they have to sign up on your website first, and then they can use the app, like Netflix is like that, then Apple does not get any of the money.
So why don't they just cut their cut to 15%?
They've done that, but what they did yesterday was
Only
something new.
temporarily. They haven't done that across the board at all.
They've done it across the board if you earn $1 million a year or less. Or I think it's $1 million. I can't remember. I think it's $1 million. But
So
what
why
they did
isn't that good
yesterday-
enough?
But what they did yesterday is something totally new, Steve. This is the key point. They said they will allow anyone who takes money on the App Store through the app, and Apple gets their share. They'll allow any of those people to separately communicate with that customer base and give them an alternate way to pay that doesn't go through Apple, and that's okay. So basically, they're allowing you to market to your customers that you acquired on the Apple platform and to give them a way to get off of the Apple platform from a payment point of view.
And
Okay.
the whole thing around that is that's their way of trying to stay away from losing a big suit. But they're dictating the terms still. Whereas, the other argument is, why should these two companies dictate the terms of this huge industry where billions of dollars are at stake?
I see it the other way. I say, why should Epic freeload on Apple's investment in iOS or Google's in Android by thinking they can take a ride and not pay the store?
Well, I see both perspectives, but
Yeah.
why the hell is Apple doing what they're doing? Unless they're
They don't
trying
want to get sued. Yeah, they don't want to lose big.
I think it's a mistake. They've made two mistakes recently, both of which indicate weakness. I think one in the face of government with the child porn spying stuff, and this one in relationship to both government and partners in the taking money from their investment. In both cases, I think they're caving to pressure.
I think that
Is Tim Apple in trouble?
I think in both cases, they're trying to disrupt themselves before they're disrupted by others.
Probably.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's better to disrupt yourself and feel like you have some power over it than have no power and get crushed. Anyway,
Right.
on that cheery note, I gotta go.
Thanks,
Have a
Brent.
good weekend.
Next time.
Thank you, Brent.
And
Bye-bye.
enjoy the rest of your birthday, Keith.
Thank you.
Buy
Will
some
do.
tech or something.
Send me some suggestions.
All right, see you guys.
All right.
And then there was nothing.
Oh, there's something now. Now there's
Go on,
something.
Frank.
I have something, but I think we got to be close to the end here. So I'll just say really quickly to Dennis, lithium is not just a drug.
That's true. That's true. There's some interesting companies out there, especially mining companies. The thing you got to worry about lithium is that it may be lithium batteries might be replaced by solid state batteries in the next 5 years.
So I mention this because of the large deposits of lithium in Afghanistan, which will be controlled by the Taliban. So
Yeah.
that means that they will have, at least for the foreseeable future, some play in the electric vehicle market.
Yeah,
If,
that's
in fact,
that's probably why the Chinese are so interested in getting into Afghanistan. There's a lot of lithium on the Chinese side of the border as well. There's also some in North America. But
Isn't
again,
there some in doesn't South America and Bolivia, I think, has
Olivia.
yeah.
Yeah, but Dennis, how long do you think it's going to take for the move away from lithium to become more apparent?
There are some some publicly traded companies that are that have patents on solid state batteries. That's what it's going to take. It's going to take solid state batteries to make things real. Hydrogen, I don't see it as a future for electric vehicles, although Toyota and Honda both have significant hydrogen car programs. I think they're probably going to end up with hydrogen trucks. But I'm looking at a 5-year horizon for lithium batteries.
Okay.
And then how do they get thrown out?
Same way as lead acid batteries get thrown out. You probably don't work on your own car. None of you do, and that's fine. But whenever I have to change a battery in my car, I have to bring the old one in, even though it's dead. And if I don't bring it in, they'll give me a new battery, but they'll charge me something like $20 core charge for the old battery, and I'll get that $20 back when I bring back the old battery. That's because the lead in the lead acid battery gets recycled, and the same thing's quite possible for lithium.
Okay.
All right. Quick thoughts from Michael Markman. Anything you wanted to bring up or talk about quickly?
No, actually, I have nothing. I have nothing. This is it.
It's a rare moment. Okay. Keith, I think you've already taken a good shot at it.
I have. I'll just move my head to remind people what the big news of the day is.
It's your birthday.
It is that, and this is who could get a better gift than this?
Okay.
For those who don't know, 24 hours ago, the world was told that this guy was going to Manchester City, which is the vicious rival of Manchester United. And all of the Manchester United fan vlogs on YouTube were calling him a traitor. And I woke up this morning to the news that it was all a lie and he's coming to Manchester United, and they all said he was a hero. And it's been so wonderful just to watch how fast the opinions changed.
I just want you to know I am available to go to a Man U game with you again. If
Nice.
you let me know, I'll be there.
I took Frank to a final that Manchester United won, right? If I recall.
Yeah.
At Wembley Stadium, which was
It was the Spurs.
Yeah, we beat Tottenham. I think it was Frank's first experience of English football.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
All the explosions and the throwing beer and all, that was great. It was just great.
I do have one question for Keith. Do you have any reaction to the Ted Lasso series?
Oh, it's fantastic.
It's-
we watch it as a family every Friday after dinner. Even my wife can watch it because it's hilarious.
New episode today. Interesting thing. I think 3 of the stars, all 3 of them in the coaching staff, or 2 in the coaching staff, and the guy who plays the money man. They're all in the same Emmy nominated category. So there's
amazing.
3 of them are against each other in that same category. So it's a fabulous show, and it's tonight.
Yep.
What's tonight?
Ted Lasso.
Oh,
New episode.
who?
Oh my God.
No, you
Yeah,
have to watch.
I don't get it. I just don't get it. We
you-
watched
you would
the
get
first
it.
episode and said, okay.
Yeah, there was a story.
The thing is, Ted Lasso was created as a one joke promotional ad series a few years ago when NBC had the rights to broadcast the Premier League, and they were trying to orient American viewers to British football. And that was the joke. It was an American coach hired to coach a game that he knew nothing about. And that was a way of teaching the viewers some rudiments of football. What's amazing is that they've been able to expand that one joke into a series and create a whole universe of characters around that one joke and get beyond it. In the first episode, you don't get very much of that. So you mainly get a rehash of the exact same jokes that were used in the promo series in what was it, 2014. So now, after that, I would recommend, Steve, that you give it a few shots, because they have expanded it in a really engaging way.
You know, today Fast Company published a story, and the headline was 5 times Ted Lasso reminded us what great leadership looks like. And every time I watch that show, I'm astounded by the simplicity of his leadership, and how, at least, you know, as well written as it is, the simplicity of his leadership and how it creates a situation that gets resolved. Of
That's
course,
become
every
the
episode.
main theme. The main theme is
Yeah.
about mentoring and coaching and getting people to perform better. It's not
Yeah.
a football show so much as it is a human experience show.
Yeah,
And
it's a great show.
I've been watching this Netflix show. This is it. It's French. It's fantastic. It's six episodes in a short season, set in Nice, and it's a kind of a thriller. It's very, very good. Gone for Good on Netflix.
Okay, I'm there. Oh, it's Harlan Coben?
It's based on a book by. I don't know who Harlan Coben is, so you'd have to.
He's a
tell me.
British writer.
Oh yeah, so it's based on that book. I won't spoil it, but it's just trust me, it's really good. 6 episodes.
I'm in,
Okay.
starting tonight after
Ted
I
Lasso,
finish.
no.
Yes.
Gone for Good, yes. No, I know
No.
you're going to watch it, and
Oh,
then
it's
I
great.
end up loving it. But
Yeah.
I'm still, I'm from Missouri on that one. Okay, Dennis, last thoughts, and thank you.
Well, thank you. And last thought. I am really happy that we talked about the things that we talked about, and that we didn't talk about the things that we didn't talk about. Thank you.
Yay.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of terrible stuff going on in the world, and
And we don't need to reiterate it. Everybody knows.
well, I just don't think that we can do much more than feel sorry and sad for the sacrifice of the people who've lost their lives on all sides in this conflict. And as far as I was talking about the pandemic, but
Yeah, that too.
yeah, I just don't think that there's much that we can do about this except start to learn how to think and work and live smarter.
For sure. Hey, Keith.
Wait a minute. You just paid for his contract, it looks like.
Yeah, they went up 7.3% on the day, and they're worth already about 3 billion-ish. What is it, 2.8 billion? So they made 10 times his contract in one day in the stock price.
Well, just if you know anybody over there, just tell them I'll do the same job for like 10%. I'm waiting.
10 bucks.
Yeah. What is it that he does?
10 bob.
I don't think I could run up and down the field twice.
Is that the guy?
He's the top
goalie?
scoring player ever in the history of everything he's played in.
Yeah. You should see him in baseball. Wow.
Did I ever tell you my middle
Short
name is
right.
Pele?
Did they build a short?
Wait a minute. You have a Pele joke?
I said, yeah. I said, have I ever told you that my middle name was Pele?
Okay. And so what's the joke?
It's not.
Oh.
All right, Michael, last thought.
I've done them again.
I'm going to
No
keep
more.
coming
No
back.
more.
No.
Out. Except
well,
thank you for a wonderful opportunity to discuss some things that we rarely discuss.
And thank you. Thanks to Frank Radis.
Thanks a lot, guys. Terrific. Again, it's like, wow, three great shows in a row. It's a hat trick.
Woo.
Yeah. And now we're going to have to figure out the hat trick of releasing them.
Not my job.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, I'm going to need it. Thanks to Keith Shear.
Thank you. It's been fun.
And happy birthday again, Keith.
Birthday
Thanks,
boy.
Tina. Thanks, guys. Sweet.
Thanks to Brent Leary. And can we have the producer and director on screen so I can thank her?
Oh.
Boom.
Very-
Boom.
Thanks
Hello,
to
man.
our producer and
Pelosi
director,
clap.
Tina Chase Gillmor.
Yay, nice show, guys. Thank you.
Thanks to everybody who showed up and especially those who didn't. We'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Chow mein.